the concept of using sensory imprinting, it relates to creating positive moments in certain moments of the pig's life, and then bringing this back in specific transitional or challenging moments for this animal. So, like I said, imprinting, it can be behavioral, it can be sensory. Normally behavioral, it is a lot related to how the sow will interact with the piglets, for example. Swine.
Hello and welcome to the Swine podcast. I'm Dr. Tara Donovan, your host today. And today I want to introduce our guest, Dr. Bruno Silva. Dr. Silva is a professor and researcher in swine nutrition and environmental adaptation at the Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais in Brazil. Welcome to our show, Dr. Silva. How are you?
Hi, Tara. Thanks for the introduction. I'm well. How about you? Hope everything's okay, right?
Yeah, I'm good. So Dr. Silva has expertise in the field of nutritional requirements and environmental adaptation. And so today I want to, before we get started, could you just give us a brief summary of your education and career path that led you to your current position at the university?
Initially, basically, I'm undergraduate in animal science. Have a master's and a PhD in swine nutrition and environmental adaptation. Basically, focusing on understanding the effects of the interaction of the environment with nutrition and with the animal performance, with pig performance in general. So basically, the past years we've been dedicating a lot, putting a lot of effort into understanding how does the environment impact on the animal's physiology, metabolism, productivity in general, and what could we do from a nutritional perspective to help to attenuate the negative impacts of the environment on animal performance. As I mentioned, I undergraduated in animal science. I took a master and a PhD in swine production, swine nutrition, environmental adaptation. Worked a couple of years, a bit more, I think almost 5 years for a genetic company as a global nutritionist. And since 2012, I joined the university, where nowadays I'm responsible for teaching or giving classes in swine nutrition production and animal bioclimatology. Also head of our research unit here at the university in our pig unit that's responsible mainly for generating all the information related to the research that we've been conducting in the past years.
Great, thank you.
A worldwide leader in animal nutrition, Adiceo's portfolio of products includes methionine, the full range of vitamins, enzymes, organic selenium, probiotics, mycotoxin management strategies, and palatability products. With such a diverse offering, Adiceo supports its customers with a broad range of expertise, tools, and services to help them maintain a competitive advantage. Adiceo, fueling predictable profits. To learn more, visit Adiceo at www.adiceo.com.
So today we're going to talk about a kind of a new topic for me, and so sensory imprinting. Tell me what that is.
Well, it is an interesting topic. Normally, when we discuss about the effects of imprinting or what is imprinting, I normally like to make a comparison, for example, with our day-to-day living style. Or, for example, I mean, if one day you go to a restaurant and then you smell a specific food or sense something that reminds you of something that happened in the past, a nice thing. So it relates to maybe your grandmother's cooking. It relates to what your mother used to do. So it brings you a very nice and warm feeling. So this is basically sensory imprinting. So in general, if we look at the definition, imprinting or stamping, psychology. It is a behavioral response acquired at the beginning of the life or at a determined specific moment of the animal's life. Normally, it's not reversible. So it means that depending on how you correlate the situation, so with a positive or a negative reaction, this actually is actually imprinted in your memory. It is imprinted in how you will deal with the situation once you confront it again. Imprinting, it can be considered as behavioral or and also sensory. So this means that you can learn. So the animal can learn from a specific situation, specific moment, creating a positive or a negative memory, and also based on smells. So smell or taste. So leading to something that is attractive, we could be attracted to, or actually it can create a type of a neophobia, and this animal won't accept that feed or won't accept that taste. Let's put it like that.
Right. That's interesting. And I do have, some personal experience. Recently, I went into a bookstore and it reminded me, the smell it's an older bookstore. It reminded me of a library that I went to when I was a young kid. And so, yes, I definitely have understand what you mean by that smell, right? The sensory and the memories it brings back.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you working with pigs in this area? So tell us, a little bit more about what you're doing.
Okay, so understanding that the animals they have specific moments that they that you can actually expose them to specific situations, which can be desirable or actually could induce negative reactions. The use of sensory imprinting could be used as a strategy to link specific moments to reduce stressful situations. So I'll give you an example: weaning. Weaning is one of the most stressful and challenging moments in the pig's life. So if we can use a sensory concept, so let's say linking something that the piglet was having contact with in the farrowing room, and then using the same sense, the same smell, or the same component after weaning, would help this animal, would help ease the stress, because he would be like, okay, I remember this is something related to my mother, this is something related to my brothers and sisters, maybe this is something good. So the concept of using sensory imprinting, it relates to creating positive moments in certain moments of the pig's life, and then bringing this back in specific transitional or challenging moments for this animal. So, like I said, imprinting, it can be behavioral, it can be sensory. Normally behavioral, it is a lot related to how the sow will interact with the piglets, for example. It is a big deal when you start looking at the piglet's behavior and how he behaves himself when he's not close to the mother. Normally, he will tend to express what he learned from his mother. So it is very interesting. We have a AI lab here at the university where we look at feeding behavior. We have feeding stations and looking at the whole kinetics using algorithms and understanding the piglets. And the interesting thing is that in the first week post-weaning, normally the pig or the piglets, they will tend to show exactly the same feeding pattern that their mother used to show in the farrowing room. So sows, they tend to eat around 80% of their daily meal or their daily intakes between midnight and 9 o'clock in the morning. And it's interesting that in the first week post-weaning, the pigs, they tend to show exactly the same behavior. They tend to go to the feeder more or less at the same time. So that's what they saw. That's what they learned with their mother. Of course, after a week, you start getting a bit of social interaction, the effects of the environment, and they start losing a bit this perception, and then they tend to go to the feeder at different moments. But the first days post-weaning, you really see that they do reflect what their mother was doing. So this means that we could really learn from this, and we could really benefit from understanding how does the sow teach these piglets, and then use this as alternative techniques to improve the adaptation. So the behavioral aspect is one. So knowing when the sow eats, how does the sow eat? Where is the piglet's feeder for creep feed located, and where the piglet's drinker is also located, if it's close to the mother's drinker. So that's very nice. We've got several tapings and footages showing that, for instance, you'll find the piglets eating together with the sow in her trough already from day 12 or day 13. So just playing around, messing around, but eating with the sow. So they're learning, they're understanding what they can eat and what they cannot eat. And then from understanding that the sow has this role in teaching the piglets on how to eat, we could actually use sensory technology to link and bond this even more. So that's example of the smell, of having a smell of something that reminds us of something very positive that happened at a certain moment. So using feed additives that have this possibility of activating the retronasal mechanisms in these pigs is quite effective. So, for instance, using a feed flavor in the sow's feed, and then knowing that the piglet has access to this feed, knowing that if this product has volatile compounds or this product has some compounds that can be transferred via milk, this also can be a way of impacting, of imprinting the piglets. Because you can have this product going through milk, or even when the sow is eating, the piglet has access to the sow's feed. And then when you wean them, if the first thing that they have contact with is this component, the smell, this taste, this can actually stimulate a higher adaptation or easier adaptation right after weaning. We published a study last year on sensory imprinting where we managed to prove this. So we demonstrated that if we use a specific component for the sows and then you repeat this for the piglets, this does stimulate feed intake. We performed a second study. We're now working on the paper where we did the whole evaluation using heat maps. So looking at the behavior pattern, but by heat maps, and then week after week, we just went playing around with the feeders, letting the piglets have access to different feeders or different concepts. And it's very interesting. Whenever he finds out that what you're giving to him is related to what his mother used to have and during the previous phase, immediately he seems to recognize that, and they start eating. And you do see a very interesting change in the feeding pattern. They simply ignore the other feeder and just focus on that one because it has something very interesting or that brings a very positive memory. So in general, the concept of imprinting, of sensory imprinting and behavioral imprinting is highly relevant to help us ease these transition periods, these challenging periods for the pigs.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we had done some look into studies of having creep feed put into the farrowing house before weaning, and then using the same feed, the same either flavors or a very similar composite of that feed as the early nursery diet, right, to try to get that same process. But I had never thought about or heard about using the sow feed, and it's really the sow is the first thing that that pig is really imprinted on, right? It's the pig's mom, and so that's a little bit different concept and interesting, so unique.
No, exactly, because the sow is teaching the piglet what he can eat. Because normally, if you look at the patterns that the animals that they learn, so they have to learn what they can eat, where they have to drink, where they have to defecate, where they have to urinate. So the sow is a role model. It is interesting that, due to the fact that modern pig production has closed the sows into tight spaces. Basically, the sow can only stand, sit, and lie down. So she doesn't have too many options but to defecate and to urinate at the back. That's it. So what the piglets learn is that that's the area where you have to do your necessities. That's where you have to defecate. That's where you have to urinate. And normally, when you look on a farm level, where do they put the creep feeders? Normally at the back, because it's close to the corridor, that's easy access. And what happens is that the piglets are urinating and defecating inside this feeder. So the thing is that we got it completely wrong. I mean, we have to put it where the sow is eating close so that she can show to them, okay, this is where you eat and this is what you have to eat. So it's interesting how this behavior, it really works. And when you have the possibility of working with a free open farrowing system, for example, where the sow can move around and she chooses a specific spot to defecate and urinate, you'll see that the piglets do exactly what she does. So she goes to the feeder, they go to the feeder, she urinates, defecates on one specific spot of the cage, they'll do the same. So it's really interesting how the sow has this capability of teaching these animals, and I think that there's a lot we can benefit from this.
Yeah, I think, and absolutely, we've had the same discussion of where to put the creep feeder. Well, for workers, it's easier here, but in reality, it should be here. And I was always taught, they have a bathroom and an eating station and a drinking station and a bedroom, right? So where they sleep. So, yeah, exactly. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So are you working on anything like, you talk about adaptation. So are you working on like light or some noise or some kind of a stimulation to maybe adapt feeding behavior to sort of our benefit in terms of, either feeder space, or coming in and getting the sow up, right? That they always get up and you do a check or a health check first thing in the morning when you go through. Any work on that, the adaptation part?
The past years, we've been focusing a lot on trying to understand the feeding patterns of sows and piglets. So, because the thing is, normally when you go to a farm, it's and you ask them, "Oh, how do you feed your sows?" Well, normally the workers, they tend to think that sows, they have the same feeding preference as humans do. So he thinks, well, I have breakfast, I have lunch, I have dinner. So the sow needs breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then this was something very interesting because when we looked at the feeding behavior of gestating sows, because for almost the past, let's say, 30 years, we've been confining sows in cages and then giving them the feed according to what we think should be the moment that they should receive the feed. But once you give this animal its choice of deciding how it wants to eat, when it wants to eat, so using automatic feeding stations, for example, you start seeing that they show a different feeding pattern from what we normally do. So, for example, gestating sows, we've seen that sows, well, basically 90% of the sows will visit the feeder, will tend to eat everything that is allowed, or in terms of allowance, between, let's say, 1 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning. Basically, with a big peak around 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then if you look at lactation, they tend to follow exactly the same type of feeding behavior. As I previously mentioned, 80% of the sow's total feed intake in the farrowing room happens between 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning, with a peak around 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And then, of course, in the afternoon, there's another peak, which is around 5, 6 o'clock. In gestation, depending on how you feed this animal, depending on the composition of your diet, you might get the second peak at the end of the day. But since the sow has actually had access to everything that was allowed in the first peak, she actually just visits the station, but there's no feed. So we started seeing that. That was something interesting because we work a lot with precision feeding here, so with precision feeders and modeling. So basically, we feed our sows based on models. And when you allow the sow to choose how she wants to eat, well, she will show her natural innate feeding behavior, which is during the night, let's say 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, she eats everything almost at once. So if we allow 2.5 kilos or 3 kilos, she will eat everything there. But then we started observing that at the end of the day, the sows were showing peaks so a strong peak of visiting the feeding stations. But of course, there was no feed there, no feed allowance, because she had already consumed all the meal that was allowed in the beginning. But then we also started seeing a lot of fighting, more agitation of the sows, and even the sows trying to hit the machines, the stations, to see if it can vibrate and some feed can fall down. So it got me wondering, well, this doesn't make sense. If the animal received all the nutrients it was programmed initially to receive, so the total amount of energy, amino acids, minerals, vitamins, within those, let's say, 2 kilos or 3 kilos that were initially programmed, why is this animal showing this behavior, which is a behavior of hunger at the end of the day? So then we looked at glucose levels in these animals, and we discovered that basically all of these sows were hypoglycemic at the end of the day. And then this got us thinking that, okay, we should probably start looking into composition of the diets. So basically, when we look at our feed here in Brazil, we work with soybean-based diets, soybean and corn-based diets, which means that more than 50% of our energy sources come from starch. So what happens is starch has high peaks of glucose, insulin, but then there are short peaks. After a couple of hours, 5 hours, they've absorbed everything, and then basically the glucose levels will stop dropping. This is the McDonald's effect. I always put it as a McDonald's effect. You go to McDonald's, you ask for a Big Mac with French fries and everything. You eat it after 3-4 hours, you're hungry again, because basically it's just starch. So we started seeing that the way the profile and how we formulate our diets has a strong impact on the feeding behavior, on the kinetics of feeding behavior. And then we also figured it out that we looked at this and we saw that if the sows are kept in this type of situation, so with this hypoglycemic condition at the end of the day, this changes the metabolic profile of this animal. So the sow will start using, for example, amino acids that were supposed to be driven for muscle composition, for mammary gland development, for fetal development, towards energy production. So actually, we start losing efficiency in terms of amino acids utilization, and of course, we create an unbalance. This is very common. We've been seeing this in high-producing sows, especially at the end of the gestation, the sows losing muscle condition at the end of gestation. So this is showing to us that probably something's wrong there in terms of energy balance. So it was really interesting that it showed to us that the feeding behavior of the sow has a direct correlation with the feed efficiency of this animal, on how this animal will deal with its diet. So this opened us for looking towards this open possibilities of looking towards nutritional strategies that could actually help attenuate this type of metabolic deviation. So use of functional fibers, for example. This is something that could generate extra metabolic energy, assuming that 30% of the sow's basal energy comes from fermentation. So from volatile fatty acids. So if you can enhance this, you can increase. We did see this. You increase the amount of energy and you keep the glycemic levels always at an ideal level without impacting on the cell's metabolic efficiency. Then on the other hand, we started also looking into lactation to see what could be happening there. Looking at the differences between young and adult sows. Do they eat the same? Does this profile change? So and how does the animal interact with the environment and change or modulate this feeding behavior? And again, what could we do from a nutritional point of view? So we looked at several components, but mainly looking at feed additives that could stimulate feed intake at challenging moments, for example, like heat stress. And it is interesting that you can modulate the peaks, you can increase the intensity of feed intake at the specific moments where the sow has an innate capacity or higher capacity for intake. So basically, what we're doing nowadays is knowing that the sow has these different or has this dynamic profile in terms of feeding behavior patterns. The idea is now looking into feed additives to try to improve efficiency, to try to improve nutrient utilization at maximum for these animals, assuming that these animals have high nutritional demands. Especially because, let's say more than 90% of the farms worldwide don't have the possibility to work with precision feeding. Let's say I don't think we even reach 2% of the farms in the world that have feeding stations that allow precision feeding. So basically, people tend to work with average values, so an average amount of feed for an average period. And it's clear that the animals nowadays are not capable of dealing with this. So maybe understanding the feeding pattern, and that you have specific moments where you can boost this feeding pattern, you can improve feeding pattern. It could give us an opportunity to use specific additives to improve efficiency, or even to correct the deficiencies caused by a standard feeding program, for example. So it is interesting because we're still learning so much with these animals and how they interact and how, because, well, due to the fact that we've always kept these sows in cages, we were never able to see this. Now that we put them in group housing with feeding stations, you start understanding that I think we've been doing well. At least we've not been implementing the correct feeding strategies for these animals. At least that's my feeling.
Maybe not feeding to their natural behaviors, right? I think we've done a pretty thorough job of understanding in that situation what are their nutritional requirements, but that may not be the natural type of feeding and eating, right? The behaviors of the sow when she's in a group situation. So really, really interesting research. And I think, maybe there'll be a time when we transition to some more sophisticated feeding systems so we're able to feed them a little bit better, or maybe more precise, like you said, the ability to feed gilts differently than sows through a feed line, or an additional, feeding opportunity for just late gestating sows, right? This bump feeding type of situation. Always the challenge is how do you get that done in a mixed parity pen or row, right? So really, but you have to understand the behavior first to understand really how they should eat and how you should provide for them. So really great. So before we get to the very last part of our show, is there any final thoughts or take homes or challenges that you want to leave our audience today?
Well, I think that one thing that we should take into account is, well, exactly what we've just been mentioning. First, understanding the feeding behavior of sows, I think it's a key to unlocking genetic potential. So unlocking what these animals really need. So I think that's the first take home message. We have to try to figure out how these animals want to eat, how they eat, and try to feed them towards these natural demands in terms of feeding behavior. Second is that I think that using the knowledge related to feed preference, related to let's say flavor preference of the animals, related to what the animals really like to eat and what they have a natural preference for, could be used as interesting tools to improve the adaptation of these animals at specific moments, at specific challenging moments. So that's where the imprinting concept jumps in and can help us establish the links between phases, and then also help us ease specific stressful moments. We've been discussing here moments related to stressful periods like the weaning, for example. But this type of concept can be easily used, for example, to mask bitterness in specific feeding concepts. So the use of zinc oxide, the use of antibiotics, we know that they're very bitter components, or the use of essential oils. It's interesting that if you look at the main additives that are important for getting the piglets going through the nursery, so for gut maturation, for improving enzymatic activation, most of these components, they are bitter. They will affect palatability and feed preference. So the use of an imprinting concept could be very useful to mask these components and then improve intake, and consequently the intake of these additives that are highly important for gut maturation and for the metabolic establishment of this animal during this post-weaning period. So I think that there's a lot still to figure out on how we can use these technologies. But definitely, I would say that understanding feed intake and understanding the importance of flavors, the importance of feed preference of pigs, definitely has a strong impact on the performance of these animals.
Well, definitely. Thank you so much for your expertise in this kind of growing field of knowledge. And if our audience has questions for Dr. Bruno Silva, please message us or contact him directly. And Thank you for listening to our show. This is, again, the Swine It podcast, and give us a like on your platform if you like what we presented today. But before we end, to get to know our guest just a little bit better beyond your area of expertise, we have a few questions that we ask.
It's time for our famous three. Swine is a professional solution provider for enzymes, probiotics, and functional additives. We offer customized formulas to target nutritional issues in livestock and maximize the utility of animal feed. Find us at sunhy.com, spelled SUNHY, for more information.
And so the first one is, what's your favorite book or resource that you use in your area of expertise? So what's your go-to to get updated?
Well, normally, always looking into what's being published in terms of peer-reviewed papers. So looking at the main journals related to our field, I think that is always the first searching parameter there. And second, of course, there are specific books that we always keep as a basis or the basics whenever we want to remember something or want to understand. So basic books related to sow nutrition or related to pig nutrition, I think that is highly relevant to have always next to us.
Yeah, the Bibles of your area of interest, right? Yeah, of course. All right. So how about a favorite book or resource that you like to go to outside of your area of expertise?
Well, I'm really addicted to history. So I like to read a bit about, let's say, global history in general, getting to know a bit of different cultures, and a more broad view of specific concepts related to specific happenings worldwide. So, but more recently, I've been dedicating a lot to reading books related to Nelson Mandela, which is I was raised in South Africa, so I'm Brazilian, but was born here, but raised in South Africa. So I have a very, very nice and close connection with South Africa, with South Africa history. So the past months I've been dedicating a lot to understanding a bit more about Nelson Mandela, about his doings, about his life, and so there's some interesting books there that I would really recommend. But one of the latest books that I've read, when I really liked it, and I think for everybody, I think it's more general, not only for our specific field, but on a day-to-day basis. It is a writer called Matthew Syed. The book is called The Power of Diverse Thinking. So it is a very, very interesting book, which helps us understand the importance of collaboration. I think of collaborating, of team working, and understanding that you're not capable of growing, you're not capable of developing, just working on your own. You need to broaden. You need to incorporate more minds, more ideas. So I think that's one book that I really enjoyed, and I would recommend The Power of Diverse Thinking by Matthew Syed. But basically, like I said, I like to read a lot of books related to history.
Yeah, I do as well. I'm a bit of a museum and history buff as well. So, all right. So our last question, can you share with us an attribute or characteristic that you feel sets professionals apart from others?
Well, I think I would say nowadays, social skills. I think having the possibility to work in a team. I mean, we went through a very rough time with COVID, and it in my opinion, we went through a major setback in terms of human social skills with the pandemics. I don't think we came out very good out of the pandemics in general. So I nowadays, when I look at my team, my students, I have quite a lot of students on my team, and what I like always to work with them is social skills. I mean, knowledge, you can easily catch the knowledge that you need. A good book, or if you go to a company, they will educate you on what they want. But having social ability, knowing how to work in a team, knowing how to work with different people that think differently from you, and respecting, especially mainly respecting that each one has their own perspective, their own point of view, their own timing. That is something very hard nowadays, and I think that's what makes a difference with a good professional. If he knows how to work with people and how to interact and how to walk in different instances, different concepts, and understands that the world is very dynamic and the world is very eclectic. I think that's probably I think one of the main skills that we need nowadays.
Well, I think your recommendation of the book, it sounds like The Power of Diverse Thinking, is kind of connected to that, right?
Yeah.
And maybe reading that book helps you get some a different perspective of those social skills and how to work with others. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing what you're working on. I appreciate it. It's been great to meet you, and have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here with you. And if anybody has any questions or doubts, please just contact us, and it'll be a pleasure to help.
Great. Thank you.